Gamers. There have been a lot of game announcements over the last couple days. This is the one, though, at the tippity top of the list for me. A couple months ago, I got an email asking if I wanted to go ahead and play a game that didn't have a name yet at the time, or at the very least, they didn't give us a name. Turns out the name of the game is called, well, it's Battle Aces. Basically, the studio, they flew over a whole bunch of StarCraft nerds, myself included, and some other people too from other games. And we got to play this game for a couple days. Remember that secret trip that I went on? Basically, I flew to the US, if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday, and then I flew back home on Wednesday. Best trip of my life. No, it was a lot of flying in a very short amount of time. I did not have the greatest of sleep schedules, but this is the game that is made by a studio that has a bunch of old StarCraft developers in there. Most notably, I guess, David Kim. David Kim used to be the lead multiplayer designer for StarCraft 2. So, you know that guy that people blame whenever they lose? That's David Kim. That David Kim. Same David Kim. He now works at this studio instead, and they've been cooking up a brand new RTS game, which, this one's exciting. Yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely very different, but this game has deck building. Now, I know that is something a lot of StarCraft players in particular are allergic to, but it's actually kind of cool. So we were there with maybe like 20, maybe 25 people or so. StarCraft commentators, but also pro gamers. Guys like Parting, guys like Clem, everybody got to try this out, right? And we were sitting there playing on like a server that they hosted locally, because obviously the game was, well, not released yet. It's still not released right now. It was like a pre-alpha edition or whatever you want to call it. And we had this internal meta. And I am usually not a massive fan of like games that have like deck building, or at the very least, I always am a little hesitant about it. But what I found myself happening, right? I played a game, for example, against Clem. Clem absolutely destroyed me. And rather, and this is the key right here, rather than me saying, no, Clem is better at video games than me, I blamed the deck. I naturally picked the exact deck that Clem was playing in my next game, and I started winning some matches there too. Yeah, and I actually think that is a very underestimated mechanic, at least like a mental mechanic for RTS players, where you give it a try and you're like, no, it's not me that's the problem. It's clearly my deck that's the issue. Now, what's really cool is that initially, right, so for like the first couple hours, the pro gamers were feeling pretty smug about it all. Yeah, the StarCraft casters were all sitting there like, this unit is broken. This has no counter. And then, well, one of the game developers showed us, wait a second, no. If you pick these and these units, you can counter that build quite easily. And over the course of like the 2 days that we were there, the meta shifted wildly. And it was so much fun to actually watch this develop. Some of the, so I guess the best praise I can give a game that's in development is that after that first day, right, we went back to the hotel. There was still a second day before I would fly back home. I couldn't sleep because I was incredibly jet lagged, but I was super excited to continue playing the game. So the first day, I think we must have played like 6 hours or so. I was excited to go back to the studio and actually like continue playing the game. Which is, as somebody who's played a lot of RTS games, that doesn't really happen very quickly. I think that's a pretty good sign. Yeah, it's very addictive because you have so many different ways to play the game and so many different loadouts. And obviously they can change the units, they can adjust a lot of stuff. So I'm not sure exactly what they're going to show us here. Yeah. Now it is very different than StarCraft. They actually sent me over some proper like gameplay matches from start to finish, so we'll have a look at those in just a moment. But it basically lets go of all of the base building that a lot of people love in RTS games, myself included. Oh my god. Those units, I have not seen those big boys before. It gets rid of a lot of the base building that a lot of people know from, for example, StarCraft. Because the thing is, right, and I think the studio has thought about that quite well, do people that casually play RTS games actually want to learn build orders and stuff, right? Because like, if you want to play StarCraft 2 1v1 competitively, it's gonna come with like 20 hours of study. And like a lot of 1v1 practice and really playing against the AI and, you know, asking friends. And like there's this lead up that you need if you want to play StarCraft 2 competitively. And it takes a lot of time. It's kind of like running a second job or whatever, right? So it seems like this game is trying to like get rid of all of that. So here's one of the gameplay files to send over. So this is a 2v2. Apparently Ted, together with David Kim, going up against Stefan and MS Kagal? I'm not sure. Anyways, This is how the game starts.
Your buddy just called in a resource base.
Okay, so this is a 2v2. I haven't actually seen a 2v2. There's two ways in which you win this game. Either you kill all of your opponent's bases, fair enough, or the timer runs down to 0. So the absolute maximum duration for a game is 10 minutes. Now that is very different than pretty much every RTS game out there. Yeah, there's a maximum of 10 minutes for every game. And what's very strange, and Wardy brought this up. I was thinking about it myself. Wardy brought up that the games kind of feel like they are longer than they actually are because the action starts right at the very beginning. So even though like a 10-minute game doesn't seem like a very long amount of time, it really does feel like the game is very fast-paced and the game actually kind of moves on. So at the beginning of a game, so you basically set up your deck, right? You build your deck. There's different tiers to the units. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the command card over here. There's a couple different resources. There's like a supply count, whatever, right? So at this point in the game, the player over here that we are observing with, they can build 2 different units. Now, for 400 of each of these 2 resources, you can either build an expansion, you can tech up towards like, what is it? Like, I have the notes here somewhere of what they called this. One second, let me see if I can find this. They give, I think it's a foundry, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. It's a foundry or a star forge. That's it. Yeah, it's a minus 400 for everything if you end up losing it. So it's 400 for an expansion, which is this hotkey. It is 400 for a foundry, which is this hotkey, and then 400 as well for a star forge. Yeah, and the idea is that you can just build one of those if you want it. Now, at the very beginning of this particular match, they expand it. So you can see that they have an expansion on the mini-map here. And the expansions are actually predetermined. So the only thing you do to build an expansion is hit the hotkey Z. And in pretty much every game that we ended up playing, everybody just smashed hotkey Z right at the very beginning of a match. Obviously, balance-wise, I'm sure they're going to change a lot of things. And the units definitely are, you know, very tweakable. But look, he spammed Z here and both players instantly expanded. So you don't actually have to, like, go across the map and like build an expansion and build a base or whatever. This is how you start off. Besides that, there is no actual unit building or not like unit production because everything spawns in immediately. Right at the very beginning of the match, you can just start spawning in units. So you could, for example, choose to not expand, but instead go for like a whole lot of unit production right at the very start. Or you can go straight into a foundry, or for example, a star forge. So naturally, Fear Dragon was there as well. Fear Dragon immediately came up with the dirtiest cheese in this game, where everybody is fast expending, but Fear Dragon found out that there's a unit you can get pretty early. I think it was in the what is it? The foundry, where you just win the game if you don't micro pretty much perfectly, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, he basically came up with the 6 pool of the game, except it was like a tech, yeah. Fear Dragon's known for his Dark Templar cheeses and all kinds of nasty stuff. So, I guess it wasn't all too surprising. So you don't have to build workers. Basically, after you build an expansion, I think it takes like a minute or so before the units and the workers spawn in. So you can actually see the workers spawning in over here on the left. These little fields will come into effect. And most notably here too, if you look at the minimap right now, you have vision of where the opponent's expansions are. So there is a fog of war, which is this like, I don't know, this like red dust type of thing that we see. There is a fog of war, but you can see that your opponents have expanded. Yeah, it's like sand, I guess. Like a very foggy type of thing. Okay, so this is the enemies now attacking towards the top left. Oh, another cool little overview screen that is quite neat. So I think it's hotkey tab. You can see what the opponents are doing. So you can see the units that they have in their decks and what you should be playing against. So the one that David Kim, I think we're observing David Kim here. He has this recall unit. So that's these little blue dudes over here. These purpley blue dudes. They can recall towards expansions on a very quick cooldown. So this is kind of like, at least in my experience, it's kind of like the macro build where you use that for base defense, because even though they're relatively slow and relatively weak, you can expand all over the map and use that for teleportation, which is kind of neat. Yeah, so his ally is running the blinky boys instead, those green guys that you see running across the screen. So the game either ends when you destroy all of the opponent's structures, or the timer runs down to 0 and there's like a score system. And it forces the game basically to end by like minute 10, right? So either you win on score, but that rarely happens most of the time. So we actually have what seems to be a bit of a base trade here. Yeah, recall right now again by David Kim. Trying to back off. His ally is still in the bottom right-hand corner, so he's actually trying to kill one of those bases. Yeah. So unit production always happens from the main. But there is like some wild and wacky units that you can build in this game that are all very, very cool. And obviously they can add so much, right? You can have like static defensive structures as like one unit type. You can do, I don't know, like siege. I don't know. There's all kinds of options that could be built. It's very easy to read. I think that's one of the things that they really focused on. Because you want to be able to quickly jump into a game, right? So this is kind of what I'm talking about, right? So we're now 3 minutes into this game. It kind of feels like we've arrived in the mid-game. Right? In StarCraft 2, you'd still be building drones in your main at this point. And it's a very different vibe. The games seem to go by so very rapidly, but still it feels like a relatively long match. So there's actually some, I think they're called Phoenixes if I'm not mistaken, those flying units, those machines. I don't know any of the unit names, but the teleport does have a cooldown. So that's the Q ability that we see over here. So when he has army selected, you can see the Q ability over here. The UI, by the way, is incredibly minimalistic. So you either select your army or you select your units. Or, sorry, your bases. And that's really about it. Yeah, you can individually click on units if you want to. But, like one of the... That's the Stimpack unit, by the way. Basically a Stimpack. Those are not the scientific names, but... In StarCraft 2... I've done a lot of coaching over the years, right? And when you coach somebody in StarCraft 2, especially in the lower leagues, usually the advice is to not look at battles. And that is one of the disconnects, I think, that kind of happens in traditional RTS. Where looking at fights is oftentimes what players naturally try to do, but it's not actually the best thing to do if it's very macro-focused. This game has not a ton of macro. At least not in the sense that you have to press a lot of hotkeys and go back to your main and all that. And then, you know, build stuff. It just has a lot of... Oh my god. Yeah, that unit I do not know. Anyways, it has a lot of instant build, right? So you kind of naturally just find yourself looking at your main army. So he's actually blinking forward, trying to get rid of that big boy. Seems like a bit of a risky choice. This is the first time I'm seeing a 2v2, but it's actually quite legible. Huh. I have no idea if it's worth target firing down that thing. Yeah, so hotkeying works the exact same way as you would expect it to. I didn't notice any like input delays or any repeat rate issues. The unit pathing was excellent. And even though it's like quite minimalistic, right? And I can imagine a lot of people would consider it maybe a bit too simplistic. I found it very fun to play. I'm not sure exactly how it would play as like an esport, for example. But I know there's a lot of mobile games out there that have like big esports scenes that are very, very simplistic. I tried playing those and I couldn't really get into it. But there's very little downtime, okay? There's not really any base building or really any, well, there's a little bit of base building, I guess, but very little.
So now, we have tentacles on Mothership in StarCraft 3? Low pop.
Thank you for the $3 donation. I don't think that's a Mothership with tentacles. They sent me like 24 games, by the way, so I don't know what we should look at next. Wasp, Stinger, Dragonfly, Multi-Base Harassment, Defend, Gunbot, Shocker, and Heavy Hunt. Okay, so this is a 1v1. David Kim going up against Stefan. All right, a 1v1. Different map apparently than 2v2. Very similar looking layout. So once again, fast expend right here by David Kim, and now he's gone for these super quick. Whoa, was that sound effect in my... Was that in real life? Or was that in the game?
Ready.
I think he may have pinked. I was trying to figure out if... That was like a weird... Okay, no. I think he may have pinked the map or something. I'm not exactly sure. So these guys are the Wasps. Super cheap. I think they're the cheapest unit in the game. Super fast. So those are actually the unit I was trying to highlight earlier. The pro gamers immediately gravitated towards them. They're basically speedlings. And they were considered very broken for the first 2 hours or so of us playing. And then we found out very quickly that, nope, they actually can get countered. So he's going quick triple base, David Kim that is. And he's going up against a guy here who's using gunbots. The gunbots have like a Stimpack-like ability, so they kind of look like these Marines. If I'm not mistaken, they're the unit that that can stim. So he's trying to attack with the wasps as the workers spawn in for the opponent. So David Kim here has a small group of units, trying to distract that main army here and then destroy the opponent's economy. So he's sacrificing most of the wasps, it look like. Yeah, did a little bit of damage. They're gonna take another minute before they spawn in again, which is kind of cool. And now he's gonna go up to the Starforge. The Fog of War looks a little annoying. It's a different color, right? Rather than like a black Fog of War, it's like I don't know, they look like clouds over here. I think there is some unit regen, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, this fog is more foggy. Yeah. Yeah, workers seem to auto respawn on 1 minute. I'm not sure exactly if the timer is 1 minute. But basically, you can tell that your opponent is expending. And then 1 minute after they expend is when the workers appear. So David Kim here with a fight in the bottom right-hand corner in the middle of the map. And then also trying to get some damage done in the opponent's main base. Mostly just trying to be super annoying with these wasps. Because they're so cheap, you can build them so easily.
Starforge is ready.
Yeah, so he built the Starforge here. And that's going to allow him to make some higher tier units. And apparently what he's going for is dragonflies. That's these guys right over here. They're very strong, and they can obviously fly. Which means that if the opponent doesn't have anti-air, and that's one of the issues you can run into when you build a deck. If you don't have anti-air, life becomes a bit of an issue. Now there is anti-air right there for Stefan, so he should be able to push this back. Clem was very good with dragonflies. Just insane multitasking. Where there's apparently units flying all over. That looks kind of sick, actually. I've never noticed that. Looks like we're on like a battlefield floating above Earth. Okay, trying to get us around here. Stim is getting activated. They will run away. Thing is, those, I think they're called stingers. Those little, I don't know, super fast moving cars that are over here that move at the same speed pretty much as the wasps. They're much more powerful. They can kind of kite. But basically, this is just a hyper-mobile army going up against a very passive army, I guess. So Stefan here not really moving around the map all too much. Yeah, Clem and Parting were very good, naturally. We did like a little internal tournament and I ended up going up against Parting. And he got very good. Artosis actually got pretty good pretty fast as well. I like to think I was playing pretty well. But I kind of like, so what I got to is that I found a build and a deck that I really liked. And we kind of just ran that for a very long while. Especially on day 2, we kind of just ran the same builds very frequently against one another with like minute adjustments. So like the first day, everybody's switching decks after, you know, like all of the units in every deck after every single round. But then, you know, day 2, you kind of find what you like. And everybody ended up with like very different setups. So what I kind of like here is that it doesn't do that thing where it tries to make the game more simplistic as far as multitasking goes. Because there's like a ridiculous amount of APM needed here. Like the faster player will definitely be better. But it is still like making like the whole macro mechanic a lot more simplistic. So I think this army here from Stefan might just be too strong. Yeah. So he's been harassing all over the map. But then Stefan comes across with just a huge army. This is the main base, by the way. So if the main base falls, Dave Kim is in a world of problems. So he's trying to save up money right now, trying to spawn in one really large group, but there's no way he's good enough. Nah. He concedes. GG. Nice. There is an attack move, yes. So this is more of a macro focus game, at least from David. There is an all army hotkey too, yes. I think the all army hotkey is tilde. You can see it over here in the bottom left when there's units. And then tab is basically the unit production. So there's like pretty much only 2 screens. I think there is a maximum army size, but I don't remember exactly how. Yeah. The games only last 10 minutes in total. So it's not like you can really, you know, make like a huge army and just sit there. The fog of war doesn't bother me, but it is a little different, I guess, than all other RTS games out there. So this time around, David is going for that teleportation unit. So he's expanding. You can see he just took a third. And he can teleport around the map. His opponent is now the one playing with the wasps. This is probably the most turtley playstyle you can go for in the early game, at least.
You got a resource space taking fire.
I actually was pleasantly surprised, though, with the way that, like, the meta worked. Because I kind of assumed as well that there would be, like, a bit of, like, an overpowered unit composition that the pro gamers in particular would be able to sniff out very rapidly. And maybe that does exist. But as long as they, like, keep iterating and they, like, add new units, for example, or they just do balance adjustments or whatever. Like, imagine you have a game like this, where, like, every week, 2 units cycle out, or whatever, right? Like, I don't know. I have no idea how they're planning on doing that. But say, like, you have a game like this, where, like, there's a deck of, like, I don't know, X amount of units, and every week there's, like, 2 that get cycled out and 2 new ones that get added in. Say, like, the most used units, they get cycled out, right? Like, you could create some really fun meta shuffles every week, where, like, even if the meta would, like, look still initially, like, it's only gonna be still for a couple days, because I think there's a lot of variety you can do, man. It's actually kind of sick. It's kind of neat, because you can just kind of, this game kind of feels like one of those, like, okay, I'm gonna boot this up for 20 minutes and just sort of play. Whereas, like, a game like Stormgate, for example, or Zero Space definitely is gonna require a little bit more study. Whereas for this, you could, like, okay, you could look at, like, okay, what's the deck that Clem is playing this week? I guess I'll be playing the same deck. Yeah, so apparently the game is called Battle Aces. I think that's what they announced today. So he's trying to sneak out units right now. He's got recall available. He's recalling with a part of his army, but not everything. So this is a small chunk of it. He's gonna send out, yeah, a little bit of a hit squad. The opponent is in the top left end as well. This is, what are they called again? King Crabs, if I'm not mistaken. King Crabs are a melee unit that deals a stupid amount of damage. So the King Crabs have already killed that base in the top left. He's now killing that base in the bottom right, and I'm assuming he's gonna recall out of here after this fight. Maybe not. There we go. So he recalled. So this is sweet little play here by David Kim. So the expansions, like I said, right, are in a predetermined order. So the way that this goes is this is your main, natural, 3rd, 4th, and then this is the 5th right over here. So as he kills this base in the bottom right-hand corner, he wants to move on to that expansion over here in the middle next. So what David does is he moves on over as far away as possible towards the bottom right. Then he tabs the expansion button, which brings his next expansion right up there. Then he recalls right up there. And then he's obviously right next door to the opponent's 3rd. Which is kind of a cute play. So there's, like, actually a lot of strategic depth. You need some turtling capabilities. I mean, they've been thinking about it. So he double expands and then he recalls up north and then he instantly attacks for the center base.
Advanced recall selected.
Advanced recall selected. So I think he's got actually a full recall army. Yep. He's got some higher tier units now too that are much better against structures. And then he recalls out again. That was actually a really sweet play by David. I like that. Okay. So now Stefan has been reduced to just 2 bases. There are some higher tier units now as well. I don't know what those do. Apparently they're called mammoths. I don't remember the mammoths. Maybe they're new. I don't know. I think David is mostly just trying to build up as big an army as possible. Because he knows he's had the economical advantage for some time. So as long as he's got 3 bases versus 2, it's fine. Him losing a 4th is irrelevant. I don't think there are any factions. You can choose any unit in your deck. Obviously, there are some limitations as far as that goes. Because you do kind of need some anti-air, for example, and you do need, like, a foundry unit. Yeah. Maybe at some point there will be factions. I'm not sure about their plans as far as that goes. So strategically, this has been really well played here by David Kim. It looks like his army is ultimately very big. He wins against... So this was like a full army wipe, basically, on both sides. But David Kim is on 3 bases, and the opponent is on 2. And again, this has now been a 4.5-minute game. It doesn't feel to me like a 4.5-minute game that we've been watching, right? Like, we're only like 4 minutes and a little bit in. For some reason, the games feel much longer than they actually are. Yeah. Since, I guess it's action right from the very beginning. There's a There's a mid-game feeling right at the very start of the game. Or maybe it's just because I'm so used to the pacing of StarCraft. Like, in StarCraft 2, exactly, this would be the moment that an Oracle flies around. Right? Like, at like minute 4 is when the Oracle arrives on the other side of the map in a Protoss versus Zerg. So, so this would be the point. Basically, when the game is over, this would kind of be the point where the Oracle would be flying in. Yeah, I think this game has a lot of potential for sure. Let's watch one more. So this is one more. Blink, Airship, and Falcon versus Recall with Dragonfly Harass.
Enemy is building a resource base.
Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that will be picking a favorite, right? I think there's a lot of people out there like, okay, there's so many RTS games in development right now. I'm gonna have to pick one. I see a lot of arguments of people like saying like, oh, Zero Space is better than Tempest Rising, and Tempest Rising is better than Stormgate, and Stormgate is better than Zero Space. And like, there's all these games in development right now. I don't really want to pick favorites personally. I just want to play all of them. That's my plan. I don't really mind that there's more options, you know? Like, this is very different than the other games out there, and I think a lot of games can easily coexist alongside one another. I also don't really see StarCraft 2 really going anywhere anytime soon, but I think it's fun. The more the merrier, man.
Horizon. Max charge.
This is definitely a more simplistic version as far as, like, base management goes.
I am Blink.
But I can't imagine as far as, like, average player enjoyment goes, this would rise to the top of the list. Because like one problem you have, right, as an RTS developer, say you want to make a StarCraft 3 right now, right? A lot of people want to play StarCraft 3, but do they really want to play StarCraft 3? Right? Like a lot of people are here for like a new big RTS game that works like the Blizzard RTS games, but a lot of people would like give them a shot for a little bit and then realize, oh my god, this is super hard. This is going to be very difficult for me to learn to play. So people, you know, obviously stick to the campaigns. People kind of play co-op. But a lot of people choose to never play 1v1. And that makes a lot of sense because for StarCraft 2 to learn 1v1, for Warcraft 3 to play 1v1, you need baseline skill, right? And like it's so hard to play because it takes so much time. So you don't really have like casual 1v1 players in a game like Warcraft or a game like StarCraft because most people that play it still in 2024 have been playing it for like a decade. And it takes a lot of work to get into, right? At least it feels like it takes a lot of work. Now, a lot of people out there are more than willing to take in the work and to put in the work, but obviously if you're a game developer, it is kind of difficult to sell a game that is focused on 1v1 primarily, or at least on multiplayer matches. I don't know if there's going to be a campaign or co-op or anything like that for this. But as far as like competition goes, I think this is the type of game that a lot of RTS fans would be willing to give a try. Like you kind of get the same vibe as you would from playing a 1v1 in like a StarCraft without needing to study for like, you know, what seems to be ages. Because as soon as, like, if you've played 1v1 in StarCraft 2 after watching 1v1 in StarCraft 2, and maybe I'm one of the issues here too, man. I've uploaded many StarCraft videos at this point, but maybe if you, like, look at the games, you're like, oh yeah, hold my beer. Let me go ahead and give it a shot, right? And you realize you're really bad. You realize you really suck at RTS games. Yeah, I think we all suck. I've played StarCraft 2 for so many years now, and you kind of figure out, yeah, no, I'm never gonna be Serral, dude. Even though I'm definitely better than the average StarCraft player, you know. I know I'm never gonna be able to reach Serral. And like, coming to that realization is a bit of a painful one. Now, in StarCraft's favor, though, that works out really well, because the vast majority of people that watch StarCraft 2 in 2024 don't actually play StarCraft 2. So it has a lot of staying power, especially as like an esport. So I'm not sure exactly how this game would play as like an esport compared to StarCraft 2. But I think as a game developer, if you're trying to like appeal to a broad audience, this makes a lot more sense. Because like, this is the type of game that you can play a round of while you're in your queue of a Dota match, right? Like you can wait for your next game to pop in Counter-Strike, and you can play a round of this. Like, this is the game you can just kind of chill when you boot up and you can hang out with your buddies on Discord and play for like a couple of minutes. And I think that's a very different vibe. Now, I'm just, you know, thinking out loud. I'm not really sure exactly how it would really play out and, you know, what the appeal of something like this truly is. But I think in my mind, there's a lot of people that are more than down to go ahead and give like a more simplistic game a shot. It's kind of like Mechabellum. Mechabellum is more like a direct strike type of competitor, right? This is maybe, what's that arcade game called? Marine Arena or something? I'm not exactly sure. Anyways, it's like a similar vibe of like a smaller version of an RTS game. StarCraft 2 pros can play this while playing StarCraft 2. You could play this easily while playing Hearthstone Battlegrounds. You could easily play this while playing Hearthstone Battlegrounds. Assuming you know Hearthstone Battlegrounds really well. I know there's people that play 2 instances of Hearthstone Battlegrounds at the same time. Because there's not enough, you know, for them to focus on. You can easily do it. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. Definitely, I'm gonna keep my eye out on this game. I'm gonna have to look this up. What's the saying? Let me see. A rising tide lifts all boats. There you go. That's the saying I was looking for. There's a lot of RTS games currently in development, and yeah, I think the more the merrier. We don't really have to choose. We can just play them all. That's what I'm gonna do anyways.